What is up, guys? Rick Cacus here, and this is the Nightfall Gold Tier Guide, showcasing not only how to beat this week's Nightfall from February 21st to the 28th, but also showing some tips for how to achieve that gold tier rating to complete the Sunrise bounty from Zavala and hopefully get the Icebreaker Exotic Sniper Rifle. So let's get started here by discussing my recommended build for this week's Nightfall, but first, to discuss that, we need to go over the current Nightfall modifiers. Firstly and foremostly is Arc Burn. This is the de facto #1 big swinging kahuna in these Nightfall modifiers, because Arc Burn is going to determine really what you're supposed to use for your build. Use an arc-based subclass, so if you've got Striker, Stormcaller, or Blade Dancer, any of those are perfectly fine. Use pretty much all arc weapons, and we're going to get onto that in a sec, because the second modifier is Specialist. This means that your special weapon does significantly more damage. So throw on an arc, shotgun, sniper rifle, fusion rifle, heck, even a sidearm is all going to be vastly superior to the solar or the void version of those weapons. So make sure you're using an arc special weapon. It's very important. You'll see I have the arc version of the sniper rifle you can get from the Archon's Forge. It was excellent in this Nightfall. But we do have a negative modifier after that, and that is Juggler. This is really where the build comes together. Because of Juggler, yes, your special weapon, it's Arc Burn and Specialist, so special weapon should be good. However, you don't want to rely too much on it, and that's because it will run out of ammo if you're using your special weapon too much. Juggler makes it so that whatever weapon you're using, no ammo drops for that weapon. So I would recommend using the Zavala Supercell Exotic Auto Rifle if you have access to it. It is the only infusible elemental primary. It happens to be Arc Burn. Every time it's Arc Burn, pretty much, I whip it out. Yes, it may be tempting to use something like the Fourth Horseman or the Queenbreaker's Bow as exotic arc special weapons, but you're going to run out of ammo if you try to use them too much. I would much rather have a primary arc damage dealing auto rifle that shreds through enemies, and I can always have that to switch to when I need more ammo for my other weapons. In any event, rounding things off, we have Exposure. You're going to have a massive increase to your shields, however they regenerate at an extremely slow pace. That's it for my recommended build. Let's move on to the Nightfall walkthrough. The strike is the Abomination Heist, the Sivified version of the old Summoning Pit strike. Now remember that the first area you're going to start off in is a patrol area. There are going to be naturally spawning enemies. If you do want to take the time to kill those enemies, if you're worried about points, it's definitely worth, if you're driving by some acolytes or some knights, kill them. You're gonna get the points and might as well. You do have a time bonus, however, so don't spend too much time doing that. Moving on, you're going to get into your first encounter pretty much right away. It's going to be an area with Hive and Splicer Fallen fighting. You interrupt that fight and kill everything. Remember that there are a couple of turrets in this beginning area. Really be aware of those. Even though it's Arc Burn and turrets are dealing, I think, solar damage, they still melt you incredibly fast. Like, you really want to make sure you don't ignore the turrets. And if you kill the turret at the very beginning, just remember it will respawn. They're infinite respawning because they're going to just appear several times throughout this Nightfall. So if you kill the turret right away and then go into the battle, just expect that turret is probably going to be back up and running by the time you've done all the rest of the dirty work and killed all the other enemies. Moving on through this Hive complex, you're going to encounter a door with some ruins. You simply whip out your ghost, and he's going to work on decrypting them when you have to fight 3 waves of enemies. Luckily, it turned out that the waves of enemies are going to be the Splicer Fallen. The Hive are really going to be what you're going to be worrying about in this Nightfall, because the Hive are just hugely arc damage dealing. Boomer Knights, Thralls, Wizards, all doing arc damage. The Splicer Fallen are definitely not as bad, so they really won't give you too much trouble in this encounter. Just be aware of which doors they spawn out of and mess them the heck up when they do. One quick tip here, although this area is divided into a right and left upper side and you can be on one and then jump to the other, remember that the enemies can jump from one side to the other as well. I've seen a lot of people get distracted looking at the door they're right in front of, killing a bunch of enemies, not noticing that all the other enemies on the other side are jumping across the gap and getting right behind them. So just kind of be aware of that. They can still attack you from all sides even though you feel isolated because you're picked one of those upper locations. Now moving on from there, once you've decrypted all those ruins, you're going to enter another kind of small-ish room with a bunch of enemies. This is a great time to pop or super like you see me here. Stormtrance just took pretty much every enemy in this room out. Moving on from there, and don't forget there is a heavy ammo crate that can spawn here, you're going to have another semi-large encounter. This, Nightfall is really just encounter after encounter after encounter, and this one is going to be a more open area for sure. There's Hive and there's Splicer Fallen, so just be aware of that. There's a couple of turrets also, especially when you first enter into this area, but the most concerning part is definitely going to be that there's some Hive Boomer Knights that spawn as you make your way towards the objective of hopping on top of a tomb ship. So you're likely going to go from killing enemies that aren't really that big of a deal. You're pumping them full of lead, they're dropping pretty quickly, and then all of a sudden it's going to switch up, and the Hive Boomer Knights are no joke. They melt you. If you get hit with one shot from the Hive Boomer, you're just going to see your health just diminish. And remember, it's exposure. So you're not going to be getting your health back if you take those substantial hits. So really be aware of that. Take it very cautiously as you're approaching those Hive Boomer Knights and take them out with sniper rifles, with whatever, from a distance. You do not want to get one of those behind you because you'll be dead faster than you can react. Now moving on from there, once you've killed all of the enemies, you're going to hop on top of the tomb ship. It's going to disappear and you're going to hop on one right underneath it. Remember to kill the turret that you see me kill, and then simply hop up and continue to the final boss encounter arena. Now in this last engagement, you're going to want to really focus on the no, you're not. You're going to want to focus literally all your attention to Boomer Knights. Boomer Knights, Boomer Knights, Boomer Knights, and the Thralls, and other stuff we're going to talk about. But seriously, the Boomer Knights will get you killed. They spawn in like the most devious places. They spawn up on top and they'll jump from ledge to ledge to ledge, and they'll just get right above you and suddenly start shooting you in a situation where you don't really have cover to avoid them. Your cover is going to be eye level, so you're going to be able to avoid the shots from the Ogre boss and from the other enemies on the ground level, but if you get a Boomer above you, you are screwed. So you really need to take your time, really need to stop shooting the boss every once in a while, look for Boomer Knights, be on top of that. They are a hassle. Now, what else is a hassle? Because quite frankly, the rest of the Nightfall is relatively straightforward. I think where people are going to struggle, if they do struggle, is this final boss encounter. There is so much stuff that can kill you. The other thing you have to be aware of, aside from the Boomer Knights, is the Thralls. They spawn out of the doors on the bottom level, and they swarm up on you. I would honestly recommend volume. Turn your volume on, a setting that you can actually hear it. Like if you're planning on listening to music, I know Bad and Bougie is the best song ever made and you've got to listen to it every 5 minutes, but seriously, have your volume high enough so that you can hear the Thralls spawning. They're going to do that little Thrall screech every time they spawn, and you'll know, okay, they're spawning. I'm going to want to look behind me. I'm going to want to look to those doors, because if you don't, if you're listening to music or you don't have your volume turned up and you don't hear that, they will spawn behind you and they will destroy you. They deal arc damage and it just does so much damage with a single melee. On top of that, you're also going to want to be aware of the fact that there can be splicer captains with elemental cannons. We encountered one with a shock cannon. This thing can absolutely melt you as well. There's so much stuff in this final boss fight that you just really have to be aware of. So the Melt Machine Captain is also something you're going to want to just make sure that when you see, well, on top of that, when you see fallen ships come in from the side, and by the way, you are going to want to avoid those as well because their turrets deal a ton of damage and they're going to drop off potentially shock captains. So you got to watch out for, the twofold attack from those splicer ships. So really the main strategy for defeating this final boss encounter is just awareness. Massive situational awareness. You're going to have to be on top of stuff, and I would highly recommend you take things slow in the sense that everything is gated on health. So there's not going to be enemies spawning until you hurt the boss a certain amount. So don't try to just pump a bunch of sniper rounds into the boss if you have a teammate dead, for example, because there's going to be enemies that spawn as a direct result of that. Remember, you're going to do a massive amount of damage to that boss because it's specialist and arc burn, so a few sniper rifle rounds are going to be crushing the boss. But don't get overzealous because you want to be making sure that when you are engaging this boss, you are ready for a bunch of extremely dangerous adds to spawn and to deal with those adds as well. Now, as for a good place to hold out, there really isn't a great one. Down at the very back and near the circular rock area in the far left-hand corner, that used to be a good spot in the normal summoning pit strike, but now there's the hive traps there. So where you see kind of me hanging out underneath that ledge is probably one of the best spots. There is a door directly to the left that enemies will spawn out of, but it's going to be the thralls and you'll hear them first usually, and you do have a lot of cover from this location. You can back off far enough that the boomers can't get you. You can definitely avoid the ogre's beam from pretty much every angle. There's just a lot of cover back there. But it can be dangerous. Everywhere in this final arena can be dangerous. You're going to be under assault from pretty much every direction. But if you have good teamwork and you remember to utilize all the tips I've provided, you should be able to overcome this Nightfall. You're going to achieve the gold tier rating at around 47,000 points. And so guys, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed and found this helpful. Now if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you want to see more Destiny content and don't want to miss out on next week's gold tier guide, please remember to slap that subscribe button. And if you actually want to be notified of new uploads, be sure to press the bell beside subscribe. Now, if you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.